And some of it was kind of like, I ashamedly say that I kind of get it. He's like, this chick's like, she doesn't have her money for rent. And he's like, well, sleep with me and I'll give you the rent. And I'm like, even though I don't think that's like a great idea, I'm like, I could see it happening.
Oh, totally.
But so he does that, and then he starts offering that up to many chicks. So you can come and stay at my place. So, but still, there's, if someone is of legal age or whatever, that's not, I mean, it's wrong, but it's legal. I mean, you could tell someone, you want to stay here, you got to screw me, and then it's up to the person if they do that.
Consenting adults.
Mm-hmm. Well, then he got popped for feeling up some like 15-year-old at the mall. And then they release him, right? They release this guy. And the same day they release him, he gets caught at the mall again. So we're looking up this thing and we're finding out this information. We're like, oh my God. And so we look it up and we come across this story about total predators in AA. And we're not talking just 13-step where someone, hooks up with someone, when they're too young. I mean like predators. Like these guys, and this girl's like, oh yeah, these guys they're... And she was completely at everyone's guys. Oh, these guys are just banging all these girls, and and the girls look to them for help, and the guy's like, yeah, I'll help you. I'll give you a fucking serenity injection. And I mean,
that isn't in any
I'm
book.
Gonna share
that's not in any book I've looked at.
It's like, I'm going to share my experience, strength, and length with you.
Jesus, but, it's like he's practiced that. That was a hell of a line. That wasn't the first time he said that line.
Oh no,
probably not even today.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm a predator. I was a predator, but I did have that alien thing with the fucking teeth. No, no. So anyway, so this chick did this article on it. We read it online, and we were like, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, fuck, I've seen a lot of that around program, and it's not always just guys. I mean, I've seen women, and so what I wanted to talk about is like, the fucking thought process or whatever behind this, because one of my things has always been, and I side with the 13 steppers most of the time for one reason and one reason only. So we get sober, right? We go to meetings. What do they tell you in meetings? Quit hanging out with your old buddies. Yep. Don't go to your old playgrounds, because that's a problem. If you're going to date a girl, you better find someone who's sober, someone that's life thing is going the same way as you. And what happens with a good-looking girl in the program? She's taken in like 7.3 minutes.
Well,
because they tell you wait a year, and nobody does.
I mean, the funny thing about it is sexual addiction is really one of those things that a lot of addicts have never even really worked on or admitted or anything like that. It's not a commonly admitted thing. Unless you've been to one of the SAA meetings, you really don't know what those things, what to look for.
SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous.
You can go to have that type of environment or that type of life.
Well, it is out of all of the addictions that are really more commonly known, it's the most acceptable one, because it's literally the thing that's okay. It's the thing that you can go to an AA or any other kind of 12-step meeting, and unless you've acknowledged that you have a sexual problem, it's fine. Well, no one's going to find out how bad of a person you are until, like he said with his friend, you don't know what that guy's like until he's been arrested and been in the mall and doing these horrible things. Yeah. But there's plenty of people, especially because of the fact that we are kings of denial, that we won't admit that that's the thing.
It's not just a river in Egypt.
Right.
It's good, fun, though.
I know.
But on those links, though, like SAB.
I consider it, in my addiction, and the fact that I admit that I'm pretty much powerless over just about anything that feels good, I know that sex is as much of one that I have to work on as alcohol.
Hey, so one time, my buddy and I are running to a meeting in Pasadena, California. We're running late. We're jamming. This fucking meeting place is spectacular. It's 2-story, it's in Glendale. It's 2-story. It has a fucking coffee shop downstairs. I mean, this is a great AA club. But we're running late. We go through the door. We see a room open in front of us. It's like 10 minutes after, it starts at 8 o'clock. I'm like, oh, shit. We go run in. We sit down. There's steps on the wall. We're sitting there. And this chick is sharing. And I've heard, lots of sex shit in meetings, especially from chicks that are, they're blowing guys to get money for drugs and whatever, and they feel bad about it and all this. And I don't know what the topic is. So I'm sitting there, and I'm listening, and I'm listening, and I'm listening. And I'm like, man, this chick's got a lot going on in the sex department. And suddenly she finishes, and people clap for her, and the guy looks over at me, and he goes, hey, I've never seen you here before. Would you like to share? And I said, my name's Bruce, and I'm an alcoholic, and I think I might be in the wrong meeting. The guy goes, oh, and everybody laughs, right? And they're like, oh, as Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous here. And the guy goes, you might want to hang out. He goes, you might want to hang out, see if you identify. And I'm like, oh. And my buddy who I'm with's like, dude, I'm going to hang out. And this is almost like the Predator thing. He's like, dude, I'm going to hang out. I'm going to start in low voice, start talking some sexy shit and see if this chick next to me starts to twitch. And I'm like, oh my God.
It's not as scuzzy as joining the clergy for the benefits. But, going to the meetings and really thinking to yourself, you're going to, it's a good place to meet people. I don't think you should ever probably walk into a meeting and think to yourself, this is a good place to meet a girl.
Well, there's a guy.
I met my ex-wife at a meeting. She was throwing a chair. I said, that's the one for me.
She's the one. She's my balance.
There's a guy that me and my wife met, or we knew, and he actually admitted something like that to us. He had got caught, doing something, trying to, like, when they had those stings and shit. Mm-hmm. But he was in the program, and he had that sort of sting thing. And so he had openly admitted this to us, and we've got 3 kids. So of course, I retract a little bit, and I'm kind of like, man, what the fuck, But then I'm like, this guy's a well-respected AA member, you know what I mean? And he's openly admitting this. And
that's like being the least crazy person in a mental hospital. He's great.
The way my mind works, I'm going, he's an honest, genuine guy. But on the other side of that coin, I'm like, I'm gonna go load my fucking gun. But
that's
that's just my alcoholism taking over. But at the same time, you're focusing on it. You're working an honest program here. You know what I mean? And you have to be, if you're, there's people out there in this program that are going to do this type of thing. But man, that's fucked up.
But the thing is it's being honest. I mean, this didn't come as a surprise to him. Right. Just like it didn't come as a surprise to your friend. That's not something that...
Not really my friend, but I knew
somebody
him.
you knew. But what I'm saying is that's not
your
shocking.
Friend, the pedophile.
It's not shocking them. It's shocking us.
Yeah.
And you talk about being open and honest, and the things that we do, it's, again, they're not working the simple steps within the program that they're in, and that includes that screwed up sex shit.
Well,
if you're not really truly doing that, if you're not changing that aspect of your performance, your humanity and yourself, especially looking at that, it's like, we went over the first step today, him and me, and him and I found myself writing about that and the things that I did sexually because of the alcohol and also because of the person that I am. And it was a big part of my first step work, was admitting to myself that, you know what, I put myself in sexual positions with women that I never, and don't look at that like you're 12 years old, Beavis. I put myself in sexual...
I went right...
Look on your face.
You're
thinking, it's right there. I'm just trying, but I put myself into sexual positions.
Hey, I went right... I gotta be completely honest. I went right there.
Of course you did.
Went right there.
I just wanted to... I'll have to change the words. Oh, wow. Thanks.
It's probably really good guacamole.
It might have a little too much garlic.
You know what? It's going to be awesome. I know it is. Now everyone at home is going to hear crunch, 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 crunch.
I got to tell you,
this is a deep subject because you can't. In AA, it's a spiritual, honest program, and you're going to have. I'm sure there's still going to be some screwed up people out there that have completely different motives, but if you're genuine and you're honest and you're real, like this guy that I'm talking about had like 20 or 30 years, as much sobriety as Bruce over here, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's on a completely different...
But they weren't honest years.
Years ago.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it wasn't an honest time. I mean, there was obviously a demon in his closet, just like the Megan's Law guy, that it's like, I don't care if he's got 50 years and he's chaired the world meetings, the world conventions.
Yeah, he's fucked up.
There's a monster in there that he may not choose drugs, but he's doing something... terrible on the side.
We're going to have to work this is when you introduce that sex inventory into your program. When you work your moral inventory, you should be working a sex inventory also.
Well, that should be a
your
part.
Fucking moral inventory.
Well, that honesty, I think that honesty in taking and really working, and there's plenty of steps you can tie the sex into. Yeah. But if you're working that in there, if you have any history drunk, any history on drugs, you have a sexual history, and you have a sexual history that have involved the drugs and the drinking. And and that's the thing is like we look at it as if it's an honest and not really notable part of the program, but we've all been in situations we shouldn't either have been in it, literally and figuratively, or where we were, or with who we should have been.
Right.
And that's going to fall in when we're talking about working a first step,
and a lot of it, I think a lot of it too depends on there's a lot of things, and that's the problem with sex things, because depending where you are, where you grew up, what your family was like, what your friends are like, because when I was young, I spent a lot of time on the Sunset Strip, and it's like, there's a story where David Lee Roth, they're hiring a security guard because they need a fucking security. They need someone to keep them in line and to keep people off them. And so this guy is this brutal guy, and he's getting interviewed by Dave, and Dave goes, "So you're the new security guy?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you have any problem with voluminous amounts of alcohol and drugs being used?" And the guy's like, "I don't really have any problem with that." He goes, "Just know I'm going to shut you down if I have to." But he goes, "I don't really have a problem." And David Lee Roth says, "Do you have a problem with tons of underage girls being around?" And he goes, "I don't really have a problem with that either." And I'm thinking, back then, in like this rock and roll heyday thing, it's like, and there's there's songs and stuff where guys are talking about, and I can't even remember the song, but there's a real famous song where the guy's talking about how the girl's underage and everything. And I'm like, and back then it was kind of like it was okay, and I'm like, it's really not okay.
The cultural in the times.
Jerry Lee Lewis.
No, I mean,
come on.
There's some John Lennon lyrics.
Look at Elvis.
Lennon and McCartney had some lyrics.
Kissing cousins? Are you effing serious? Cousins, kissing cousins. It's okay because we're cousins. I'm like, no, it's not okay.
So
it's really not.
I mean, we are truly at the point now in 2019 where we've got, the Me Too movement and the different movements where things are coming out, and that this kind of bad behavior isn't acceptable. But we are, and I think it's one of the things that needs to be possibly addressed in the programs, is it needs to be talked about that these things are real. These problems are real. There are people that literally have the mentality from the Elvis era and from the 60s era and even the 70s era where it was totally different than now. Now, you don't give an unsolicited hug. Period. There was a time where, you would really, hugging would be the way. The first see a person, oh, I'm a hugger. And if you're throwing that at somebody who's brand new to the room, coming out of God only knows what.
Yeah, that still happens in the rooms, though.
But what I'm saying is that that's the sort of thing, with the evolution of the Me Too movements and the things like that, is that the programs really need to look at themselves and realize what can we do to make women safer and more comfortable in the rooms from these kinds of scumbags that we talked about before.
We got women's meetings, man, all the time.
Sure.
There's
you know what, and that because clearly, if you think about it, the entire reason why there's men's meetings and women's meetings, you gotta know that somebody originally was like, oh yeah, we can't have a bunch of
vulnerable women
and a bunch of women in the same place.
A bunch of essentially a bunch of manipulating people, men or women, because the women can be just as manipulating as the men and just as vulnerable too. You can find a guy that's just as vulnerable as any woman, and there are going to be predatory women that are going to use the shit out of this guy.
And the problem, I think the problem with that is, and obviously it's not everyone, because this is, you can't.
It's never everybody. You can't generalize.
You can't generalize in this way, but I don't know a lot of guys that have been 13, because I know guys that have been 13. You got 13 stepped.
Yeah, by my wife. It was awesome.
By his wife.
Bitch.
But and
That
see
bitch.
that